Welcome to Dare to Share with Mistie Layne. I'm Mistie Layne, your host. I'm a best-selling author of the book, What Goes Up. Also, I'm the founder of the hashtag Be That One movement, where I encourage others to step up and share their raw, authentic truth so that we can use those life experiences to educate people, and maybe we can learn to judge less and mentor more in life. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and jump on over and share this out. Start your watch parties. Let's get the train moving here and get some comments from Facebook. Let's see who else is joining us here. Hi, Gail. Nice to see you. Hi, Wanda. Nice to have you back. It was awesome interviewing you last week. Hi, El Patrick. Love you. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. All right. I ask you to go ahead and hit that share button for me. Share this out. You never know what might be said tonight that someone out there might need to hear. And it might not even be anyone you know, but it could be someone they know. So let's just get the shares going, get the watch party started. We have a wonderful guest tonight, Miss Lori Richens. I'm just excited for the value she's going to bring to you tonight. And I want to go ahead and mention I'm also the founder of the Right to Ignite Women's Empowerment Retreat, which I'm happy to say is gearing back up. Like I said before, with the whole COVID thing, we had to take a little remission from it, but things are starting to kick back off. Things are opening up, and I'm very excited to be bringing that up. And I'll have the information on my website to you in the next month or so. I've got a good list going of those that are interested in joining. If you're interested in that writing retreat, which will be a weekend retreat, just go ahead and send me a message through Messenger, and I'll make sure that you get the flyer and all the information when it's available. All right. Let's see. Okay, everybody get those like buttons going for me and the hearts up on the screen. So we're going to be bringing in Miss Lori Richens. She's got a beautiful story to tell us today. Lori is someone that has been through so many things. I know that we all have a story to tell, and sometimes we try to compare our stories to others, and that's ridiculous because what is important to me may not be what's important or hurtful or painful to you. So all of our stories are equally important. I think the most important thing that I always say, it's not so much about the tragedy, because here we sit, all of us, we've already lived through it. We've already survived it. We've already come out the victor, right? So I think what's important from this day forward is, what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with that experience? Are we going to continue to let that sit and make us toxic because we dwell on the past? We dwell and beat ourselves up over maybe mistakes that we've made, laws that we've broken, maybe some character flaws that we have of ourselves that we exceeded, that we never knew we even could. But the point to all that is that letting it sit there and culminate does nothing but produce toxicity. So what's important is what you do with that information on the other side. Because now that we've all lived through something, now we have that priceless knowledge, and we are considered authorities now. I am an authority on domestic abuse. I can tell you every in and out of it because I lived it. I'm an authority on crack cocaine because I lived it for 10 years. I walked the streets. I learned it. I know it. So that is priceless knowledge to people out there that might be struggling. And so it's always important. That's why I always talk about transparency being necessary. It's so important that we just get out there, spread our love, spread our message to educate each other. And Lori has dared to share. She's stepped up to be that one today. She has an incredible story. I'm excited for the value she's about to bring to you. And without further ado, welcome, Dan. Welcome to the show. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Miss Lori on. Hi, Lori. Welcome to Dare to Share.
Wonderful to see you again, Misty.
I'm just excited and thrilled to have you here. I think you are just an amazing and incredible, powerful woman. After speaking with you on the phone, I just fell in love with you more. You have so many words of wisdom. I cannot wait for the audience to start hearing them come out your mouth too. All right, Lori, I tell you what, we're going to be talking today, and Lori's going to be sharing with us today some things about post-traumatic stress syndrome. abuse, isolation, suicide, family rejection, medical issues around stress in your life, and then
Mhm.
family secrets. So, Lori, first, before we get into all that, I want you to brag a little bit about some of your accomplishments. I know you've got a book out there and you've done some retreats. So, talk just briefly about some of your biggest accomplishments in life.
Okay, I'm so pleased to be joining people today to share my message and some of my life experiences. I'm actually in my office. I'm a whole family mentor. That's the name of my business, Whole Family Mentoring. And so I'm a personal and family empowerment coach. And the joy that I have of being a mentor is that I help to give families what I wish I had when I was trying to recover from some of the trauma of my past. So I know how to speak the language. I know how to approach people in a way that's safe and that helps them to feel that they can overcome, because I've walked that path myself. So I'm an emotion code practitioner and an energy worker and a body language advisor. But most importantly, I'm a mother of 7 children, and I've been married to my husband for 35 years.
What an accomplishment just that is. Today,
Background from my
I'm sorry, you cut out. I thought you
exactly,
would
and I was
stop. I
able
didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was able to transform a fractured background into a healthy family, and I help other families do the same. So that's my most joyful work.
Wow, that's incredible. 7 children. I just couldn't imagine. You got your hands full with that. And from what I see on your Facebook page, they're all very productive and just great kids. You've done a wonderful job of raising your children. It looks like they're all active in the community and talented, and it's just amazing. All right. Well, I know that things have not always been, rainbows and puppy dogs for you. So let's just go back a little bit and talk a little bit about your background since you dare to share with us. I want you to just take about 10 minutes or so and just kind of take us through a little bit of your journey, a little bit of your story, and then we'll kind of dissect little bits and pieces out after we just get the kind of gist of what's going on with you, okay?
Okay, so yes, Misty, I loved our conversation that we had recently. And I started to explain to you that about 2 years after I had been married, I got married when I was 18. And about 2 years after I was married, I started to have severe nightmares. I started to feel like I couldn't sleep with my back to the edge of the bed. If I had a door handle that my back was to, I felt unsafe and shaken. I started having severe nightmares. When my children were starting to be born, I started to have flashbacks. And so I knew that I had some trauma. I just didn't know the extent of it. And so I'm here to speak the language of the people maybe who are listening who've had suppressed trauma, and how to survive that. And you kind of a statement that I often make that says, what I survived nearly killed me as an adult, because there came a point when I was about 40 years old, after I became entrenched with the memories of things that I had actually been exposed to. I set a date to take my own life. And thankfully, that date came and went, and my children didn't know about it, and my husband didn't know about it. And those are the more vulnerable situations when people don't talk about it, that they're prepared to just exit from this world. So I'm so glad I'm here and I got through that, and I can help other people to cope with their pain as well. So one of the that I have to expound on is, one of the important lessons that I've learned is there's a shaking, there's an unsteadiness that ends up coming when you end up realizing that your life isn't what you thought it was. So I actually had a name on my birth certificate that I found out as a young girl. Actually, the person on my birth certificate was not my father. And so it took me many years after I had been married before I realized that I needed to start really searching for him and find out who he was. And then I found out that I was basically associated with a family secret, a secret that had been kept for a long time. And my peering into the past ended up creating some serious problems in the family. And so one of the strong, passionate things that I feel like needs to be expressed more is the importance of eliminating family secrets. People have this illusion that they can take their secrets to the grave, but unless we face them while we're here and use the information from the experiences that we had to empower the next generation, that pattern of dysfunction and that pattern of severe entrenched problems just keeps passing down. So that is one thing that I'm determined to stop, to help people to face their fears. Misty, you and I talked about the price that you pay when you put the truth on the table. And that's what I was hoping, and I think we're going to discuss today, when you put truth on the table.
Right. There is a price. I mean, I'm all about transparency. I've come a long way through my journey, and it took me a long time, many years, to come out with my truth, to be not even honest with the people around me that I had hurt, but just looking in the mirror and being honest with myself. Almost brings me to tears because I really remember the shame. I was just overwhelmed with shame. And it's not the same for everybody. It might be guilt, it might be fear, whatever the emotion is. It's about confronting it and addressing it. And that's what you did. You had the courage, you went out, you set out to find your birth father. That turned out however you wanted, may have not turned out. I don't know how much you're going to share with us today about that. But I just know that just finding out that you had another father, a different father from the one you thought was yours, much later in life, that alone had to be something that, just kind of makes you set back a minute and say, wow, well, if I was lied to about that, or that was kept
Right.
from me, what else is a facade about my life? Is my life even as I thought it was?
So I actually would love to add to that, because want to acknowledge your courage in being able to address the decisions that you made in your life, and that you could openly have that presented to your family in a way that could then be addressed in a positive way. Because that is the one thing that I'm finding. There are so many people out there like me that wish parents or wish other family members would just take ownership of the decisions that they made and the circumstances of their life, and then take that wisdom and pass it down to us. Because when we end up finding out about it through other means, through other circumstances, we feel betrayed. And when you feel like the foundation upon which your life was built isn't what you thought it was, that your life had been a lie, it shakes your identity. It shakes who you think you are, who the people around you are, and it leaves you in this very vulnerable, unstable place. And I was there for a long time. If I could have anything from my mother, it would be, these are the things that happened. This is what I was thinking during that season of my life. This is what I was going through. Let me just invite you into that so that I can understand, so that you can understand better. And then together we'll just gain the wisdom from it. So I love what you have done. And at some point I'd love to talk about the silence factor, and how silence ends up being kind of perpetuated and passed down through the generations as well.
Well, this might be a great segment for that, because I know you ended up with some illnesses, and we talked about how, that internal stress, the PTSD, all the things that you were going through were just contributing to that illness. So keeping those secrets and having that silence and not bringing to light what you know to be true, that's toxic to us, isn't it, Lori?
Well, the thing that's important to know is that the body has this sacred ability to just compartmentalize and process pain in a very effective way. Often it will shut it out so that when you're prepared to deal with it, then it will resurface. For me, that happened when I was 40 years old. Now, the challenge with that is I had known for years and years and years that, I had pain that had been I was certainly subject to, but it wasn't until I was 40 that my mind released the memories of things that had happened to me. And it was horrific. It was literally as if I was reliving it all over again. So imagine, Misty, and I don't know all of your life story, but imagine that you were raped in the night, or that you had something horrific happen, and then you have and you have to still take care of your family. You have to still function as a normal human being, and yet you've had this severe trauma happen. Well, imagine then for me when I'm 40, night after night after night, I'm being subject with memories and nightmares, and my body is going through this in this intense reliving of it. And my body just finally started to break, and my adrenals became completely exhausted. I started to lose my vision. I started to lose my hearing. My blood sugar was fluctuating all over the place, and so I became severely hypoglycemic. So people need to understand when they deal with trauma, when they have PTSD, that there are certain things you can do to fortify the body so you don't have a nervous breakdown, so you don't slip into anxiety attack.
Right.
Had one before, and then suddenly I'm subject to this severe anxiety attack that completely caused me to go ashen gray, and I felt like I was going to die. I don't know if you ever had an anxiety attack before.
Yes, I have.
So you know how debilitating that can be.
It was actually when I came home from prison. My mom had been raising my son for me. He was in fourth grade, and I moved in with her. And it's hard when you're 40 something years old and you've done
Yeah.
wrong, and to go back and live with your parents, because in my case it was just different. There was a lot of anger there from the things I'd put them through. But every time I would leave the house and go visit someone out of town, I'd be fine. Then I'd start driving and get about 100 miles close to my mom's house. I would get this heaviness in my chest. I would get this tingling down my arm. I couldn't breathe. And it was anxiety. I knew I was going back into that volatile, angry place that, we just hadn't worked through yet. Yeah.
And I think that's really important to acknowledge the triggers that can create that anxiety. And once you understand where they are and what they are, can really help carry you through that. But the very first time I had an anxiety attack, I only had one major anxiety attack, and it was so debilitating. I made a conscious decision. I know this doesn't work for everyone, but I made a conscious decision. And I remember being furious because I felt so out of control, like completely shut down. And I just made a decision, and I said, this will never happen to me again. I will never let a trauma put me in a situation where I cannot function. And so I went on a quest to get to the truth of why I was impacted that way. In the first place, that my body experienced the anxiety attack was in my throat. It throat was being shut off, and I couldn't breathe. And incidentally, I've done a lot of emotion clearing over the years, and I actually had a flashback of a knife being put at my throat at 3 years old, and me feeling the blade across my throat with the threat of being harmed for whatever reason. If I told, or just to be held down to have bad things happen to me. And I actually felt the blade as if it was still there. So no wonder it went to my throat, where it felt like my throat was suffocating me.
Oh my goodness. Mm. I just can't imagine. I know you told me, you said that God entrusted you with trauma. Why do you think that God entrusted you with trauma? And then after you answer that, I want you to tell me, does it make you angry that he did? and why you had to go through the pain and suffering. I mean, I know that there's
I
reasons.
love that.
Go ahead.
That that is such an excellent question. I'm sorry you broke up just a little bit. So I'd love to expound on that.
Yeah.
So as I process some of the anger, trying to figure out why I would have to be subject to that, especially children, when you think in terms of a child being in a situation where instead of being protected and nurtured to grow up and, to blossom, instead I was burdened with these horrific experiences. And I was actually given a vision, and I'm a person of faith. And when I get to a crossroads where I simply cannot understand suffering, when I can't manage to find the pearl in the experience, then that's a really bad place to be in. So I have found that whenever place blesses me with something to help me to understand the bigger picture. And he actually gave me a vision. And in this vision, I saw myself as a young girl, and I saw 3 or 4 very black, like dark forces, which represented bad people coming at me. And in my little mind, here I'm an adult woman, and I'm actually understanding and remembering that in my little mind, like 4 years old, I could see that I was surrounded with a bright yellow light. And I could see that my light was brighter than their darkness combined. And I could see that in my mind, I was actually thinking to myself, I am so little, I am so small, I cannot stop what you are going to do to me, or destroy me. Somehow, even in my youth, I had the determination that those forces would never destroy me. And I realized that my work, my divine assignment, was to intercept all of that, all of those experiences, and then stop the pattern of progression that could have gotten passed down to my children. And I did have that warrior spirit that allowed me to absorb it and then transform it into something beautiful.
Lori, I just can't. My heart is just breaking. I mean, none of us want to think about anything bad coming to a child. We always want to protect children. Can only imagine. Well, let me just say, I know that our minds are powerful, and we have so many defense mechanisms. And these children that go through different types of abuse, how they're able to fare through that, they find a way. They just find something that they can remove themselves from the situation, and then oftentimes just bury that pain deep down. Like my pain was buried with little Debbie cakes, and later with crack cocaine or pen or whatever. So I mean, we have these defensive mechanisms, but my heart just breaks just the thought of it. And for you to not know, you were having nightmares all those years but never didn't know why. And you were around 40 years old before you ever broke through and understood that you were having nightmares over childhood trauma. And I can't even imagine what that, like, your whole life at that instant changes, because everything that you thought to be true, now your whole past, it isn't what you thought. I mean, how do you even deal with that?
It is. It creates this illusion. I had neighbors, I had people I was surrounded with that were offenders, they were abusers. And so I thought my siblings were subject to that. I didn't realize that I myself had been subject to that. And Misty, I know that you are a woman of faith. So do I have permission to share another sacred experience that I had that has really helped me through this?
Please do.
Okay, because I hope this helps those who are watching this, and that they can see some divinity in it. God would never intentionally want something like that to happen to anyone. But I want to testify that we are not forsaken when those things do occur. And again, when I get to these crossroads, when I have to deal with the rage, which, by the way, rage is better to deal with than depression, because your veins, that depression, the retreating and the shutting down is so much harder to work with. So yes, I have processed a lot of rage, but there came a point where I was given a memory that my spirit used to separate from my body. I know this isn't uncommon. People probably have had this happen to them who might be listening. But what I was shown is that in my mind, I said, Heavenly Father, it's happening again. And the Savior came and my spirit separated, and I was able to go with him while it was happening. And then when it was over, I could return back to my body. Now, wouldn't it be beautiful then if we never had to remember it, if we never had to actually relive it again? But that those experiences are so important as far as our development. We are spiritual beings having an earthly experience, right?
Right.
So if God removed the residue of that experience from us, if he removed the memory of it and the bodily results of that, then I wouldn't be on this mission right now. I wouldn't have the determination or the wisdom or the insight to protect my own children. And I wouldn't be helping other families heal right now. So that experience would have been a waste. And instead, it's given me a sword, and it's given me a helmet, and it's given me a shield so that I can be this powerful contributor to make the world a better place.
Probably gives you a lot of determination too, just to make it right for other people. So you found out that your past was a lie, basically. You found out that your dad wasn't really even your dad. You went through all of that. Um, no wonder, Lori, you wanted to commit suicide. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got yourself through that day and you didn't do it.
Yeah, boy, looking back on that, it's interesting talking to my husband after the fact, because you talk about wanting to kind of escape through drugs. There would be times, by the way, this was something I found out, that I was drugged during the times when I was being abused. And so there was this feeling that became really familiar where I would start to swirl, and then suddenly I could feel that my spirit was going to escape my body, and that I was going to be adult, and you're being subject to this, and there's a part of you that wants to separate. Yeah. There's a part of you that wants to do what you used to do. And I would tell my husband, I would say, just put a drug in me, do anything, just take me out of the reality of how I'm feeling, because that's what I'm accustomed to, of having drugs in my veins, to where I would, they could do whatever they wanted to do. And perhaps there are people here too that have been subject to that. I've ended up, having multiple people tell me about date rapes and how they were drugged and then had things happen, and then abortions that would follow. And drugs are readily available. It's real. And I had no idea that was something that had occurred. So I finally got to a place where I said, I can breathe this long. I can today, and know that I will have relief. It will be over when I get to that spot. And there was a sense of like freedom, thinking, okay, I know today's hard, but on, let's say, I'll just throw a date out there, but on June 27th, it's going to be over. And when it's over, I'm going to be free, and I'm not going to have to deal with this anymore. So it was a reprieve. It was just a mental break. And I knew that I would be spared on that day. But thankfully, that date came and went, and I was able to tell my husband about it later. But it would have been tragic. I would have been a statistic. I would have been a mother of 7 children who had killed herself, and nobody would have understood because I doubt that I would have even left a date. I mean, a note.
It's not uncommon today. We have many children out there where their parents have committed suicide. I mean, suicide is, it's high, and it's I'm hoping that transparency is going to be one of the things that helps drive suicide rates down. I think as we all learn and discover and share our experiences, we will know that either our thinking wasn't monstrous or that we're not alone out there in the same pain. And once we can associate and talk it over and figure it out together, then I think people aren't going to want to kill themselves. They're going to want to live to help others, which is exactly what I talk about in my book. Is all about the more you give back, the less you're concerned about you, and you just kind of start rising above, and it feels good. It feels good to help others.
Yeah.
It feels good to serve. So, Lori, you turned your mess into a message after that day came and went, that you planned your suicide, and you just kept breathing through it. You just kept taking the next breath. Um, so now let's talk about how you start. Like, what were your first steps? What did you do to start overcoming? I mean, you must have had a wonderful husband to support you through all of this. Let me just say that right now. You know, give him all the props he deserves here as well.
Yeah, so it took a great deal of patience. I remember one day waking up. I had a daughter who was, oh, I'm thinking 5 or 6, maybe younger at the time. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I was just like, overcome with sobs. This is what I was doing. And finally, I came out of the bedroom and I went to the couch. It was the middle of the night. And my daughter's name is Elizabeth. I have 3 daughters, but she happened to be about that age at the time. And my husband came out, and here I am, hysterical, and I'm hyperventilating. And I kept saying, I feel like Elizabeth. And I feel that he had pinned my arms down and that they had offended me. Obviously, you know what that means. And I could feel the tightness on my arms from, somebody just pinning me. And I lost my body. Like, I didn't feel like I was an adult. I felt like I was this little girl. And my husband, he was desperate to get me to stop. And he kept wrapping his arms around me and he kept saying, stop crying. Or he just kept, sometimes when you see other people suffer, you want them to stop so you stop suffering.
Right.
And in that moment, he was so, in need of me not being in that kind of pain. And finally, I just said, just let me cry. Just let me cry. And I knew I had to purge this and get it out of my body. But it's just surreal what you go through as far as flashbacks. And when I had those bad experiences, then I had a walking billboard of, a constant reminder of what happened to me at that age. So it always made it harder.
Wow. I
do want to, if I may add one thing, I watched something some years ago about a veteran who came back from war, and he had been spared physically, and his wife and children were so grateful to have him back, but he had a hard time being at home. And he had like a separate apartment or a separate hotel room, and there were no pictures on the walls. It was just a very vacant, empty space. And this documentary was being done about this soldier. And basically, he said, I can't be around noise. I can't be around stimulation. I can't have people need me. And just went to this vault type setting. And one thing that I found, I did this about 4 times over I've been married 35 years. And I've done this, I think, 4 times over all of those years, where I would get to a point where I would just think, I can't be a mom. I can't be a wife. I have to get into separate space. And so I would give myself a timeout and I would go to a local hotel and I would just, sometimes I would take one of my younger children and then we'd go into this space together, but I would just need, I would need a place where I could go and where I could regroup. I could settle my soul and then return to my family. And my husband did a powerful thing one time. Again, there, you know, so few times have I ever done this, but I would tell the children where I went, and I didn't think I'd just get out. At one point, my husband called me, and instead of belittling me or, you know, how could you leave the family, or, you know, somehow thinking I should be doing better than I was, I'll never forget it. He called me and he said, "What do you need?" And it was just powerful. You know, there was no guilt, there was no shame. He just let me go through the process of whatever it took. And he knew that was the healthiest thing. And I wasn't about to harm my children from being overwhelmed emotionally or to neglect them. So I just gave myself a timeout and then I would return.
Well, you know, you talked about the defense mechanism. You go to the room. I remember when I came home from prison, it's not exactly the same, but I was incarcerated 2.5 years, and the lights were never off. The lights were never off in jail. You sleep with the lights on, they're dim, but they're never off. And when I first got home, I moved into my mom's house,
Mm,
and I could not sleep with the lights turned off. I would have nightmares. I was petrified. You're always scared, you know, and so it's an adaptation. It's a process that has to take place
mhm.
before you get into a comfortable place. So I would say anyone out there that's listening, that's going through anything, is give yourself some time and space to work through it.
Yes,
Don't expect to be just all healed up and cured up, because you have to go through the process. Like for instance, with abortion, I've talked about abortion issues that I have during my crack cocaine hiatus. Is that I just had an abortion. Like I was dropped off by my boyfriend, who was my drug dealer. Had an abortion, took a hit, had an abortion. He was out getting high the whole time I was having the abortion. He would come pick me up, you know, didn't even come in, pick me up, and I'd get back in the car, take another hit, and just boom, kept going, didn't even miss a beat, like because I didn't want to face the pain. I didn't want to. So when I ended
right.
up in jail and I was forced to start facing and looking in the mirror at all the things that were causing me to overeat, or causing me to be depressed, or causing me to do the drug, or causing me to be a runaway mom and free of responsibility, is I had to address the pain. And I
Yeah,
had to literally go through a grieving process for each child, because it was more than one. Um, I like literally had to go through that grieving process of those babies that I aborted. And I don't think I would have ever gotten through it had I not taken the time and slowed down and done what was necessary. So I hope the people listening to your story, you have a beautiful story of overcoming, but I want everyone to understand you have to do the work, guys. You
mhm.
have to do the work. You're not going to just wake up miraculously healed. I mean, you may, I don't know, but I sure didn't. I had to put the work in. I had to put the time in. I had to do the research. I had to do the forgiving. I had to forgive those, and I had to forgive myself.
Yes, let's talk about that. Can we go there for a
Yes,
moment?
please.
Yeah, so there's this myth of forgiveness that I've seen that's been passed down through the generations, that is really causing a problem. Now, being a person of faith, I understand repentance. I understand the importance of forgiveness in order to have freedom. But sometimes people forgive too soon. And what that means is they feel like it's a noble thing to forgive like say, you know, if I'm married to my husband and I find out he did something to my children and I think, okay, the noble thing to do is to just forgive him. and keep him in my children's world, then it just becomes perpetuated, and then that abuse continues. So you can forgive and still hold somebody accountable. In fact, you should forgive and still hold people accountable, because if you don't go through the accountability requirement, then you just end up having a larger monster that other innocent victims then end up being subject to. And so another thing that I wanted to address that we had touched a little bit on earlier also is, as I work with clients, I talk about the scale of the laws of the scale. And what that means is I want everyone watching or listening to this to imagine a scale of justice. So like two bowls on each side, and then you have a beam across the top and a beam coming down, and these bowls are hanging by chains. And so as soon as something's placed on one side, the side or shifts. So when you start stepping into your power, you start stepping into a place of healing, and you start setting boundaries, then obviously the people in your world are going to be affected by the new you. And so I want us to break this down. Laws, LAWS, laws of the scale. So this is typically what ends up happening. There's one of four options, sometimes a blend of two, that other people go through when you shift your side of the scale. Like I said, if you decide to stand up for yourself, or if you're in an abusive relationship and suddenly you set some standards and you're determined to live by them, then all of a sudden these other people have to decide what they're going to do with this new you. So the first thing is you are going to have people who leave.
Mm-hmm.
The L is, you want to be a part of it. They don't feel like the relationship is valuable, so they leave. The second thing, the A, is the attack. They want you to go back to how it was. So they can attack you physically, they could attack you emotionally. The narcissistic behavior starts to become really evident then. And so you have a choice to make. Are you going to hold the line when you're under attack? Because a lot of people attack when they, especially if there's been an abusive relationship. And then the W is they wait and wonder. They're like, oh, I'm not quite sure about what this new scenario is, so I'm just going to wait, and perhaps they're going to hope that the other person goes back to how they were. Perhaps they like the new you, and they're just not quite sure how this is going to ultimately turn out. And the last step is, oh gosh, it just kind of passed my mind. It'll come back to me. But the thing that's important to understand is that you cannot control what the other person chooses to do when you make a shift yourself. And so you need to be willing to pay the price to for whatever new paradigm you're wanting to have implemented in your family. And I was listening to a wonderful woman talk about what it's like when you are in dysfunctional relationships. And she said, on average, it takes a woman 7 times to leave an abusive husband before she finally sticks to it, before she finally holds the line. 7 times.
I think it took me much more than that. It took prison to get me away from them, honestly. I left them many times,
Yes.
but they're master manipulators on how to get us back.
That exactly. Now, one of the things that I found, my last name has changed 5 times. So I ended up, by the time I found my birth father, who was, I found him 3 years ago, and I was 50 years old when I found him, and it was through Ancestry DNA. And he didn't know I existed, and I didn't have a name. So it was a miracle that I found him. I had searched for over 20 years. And my mom wasn't giving me the information regarding who who my potential dad was. The person she thought was my dad, I did a DNA test with him. I think I had 6 children at the time. And I ended up doing DNA tests with multiple other people. And my mom shut down. And my mom wasn't willing to go to that place in order to and being a total hero, stepping into this space saying, I need answers. These are my children's grandparents. Not only my parents, but these are my children's, grandfather. I don't know who that person is. So again, going down that list, what do people do when you shift your side of the scale? If people don't want to go there, if there are family secrets, if they've had trauma enough themselves and they don't want to visit that place, they will attack to protect themselves. So I was attacked emotionally, verbally, and to have me be put back in my place, and I just wouldn't go there again. I stood my ground, and the consequence of that was rejection. And people need to know that when you shift your side of the scale, people will leave, and they will shut you out, and they will blame you, and they will fight you. There's lots of different take, and you have to be willing to stay the course. But I do want to point out one other thing that I had to learn. The 10 Commandments, one of the basic 10 Commandments is to honor your father and mother. Well, what do you do if your parents didn't take care of you? What if they are the problem? What if they were the perpetrators? What if they were the ones who harmed you? How do you honor your parents? That's a conflict for Christian people.
It sure is.
So this was the answer that came to me. Someone had once been asked that question. He was a man of God, and this is what he said. By living a clean, sweet life, you automatically bring honor to your parents.
Oh, okay. So not necessarily you honoring them physically, but just your being.
That's right. And so there came a point in my mind, I had the fact mother prove of here. My mother may feel that I have that I'm at fault, which she does. She feels like the victim. So many times that's the case. They'll want you to shame you into submission.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about why people go into silence, into a state of silence, because there's lots of reasons people give you the silent treatment. But in that case, you have to be willing to bear the burden of what it's like when somebody blames you for doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Wow. In that mother relationship, I know a lot of women, a lot of young girls, teens, and grown women, we struggle. I know I've struggled with my mom. Sometimes our biggest heroes can be our biggest destroyers. And, we all have our motives. We all have our reasoning. Like what you said with the secrets, she didn't want you to seek out your birth father, but those were for her. She had her reasons she didn't want you to, but she needed to honor the fact that for your own reasons, you needed to do your own quest, and then Lori, I don't know if you're comfortable talking about it, but that didn't really turn out the way you wanted it to in the end, did it?
No, not for my mother or for my father. And when I found my father, I was given this beautiful dream of a year with him, a year and a half even. And I felt so grateful. Like, it was one of those experiences where he took me in, he took me to court, and he legally had my name changed so that I could have the right name put on my birth certificate. Such a gift. And I finally understood what it was like to be a daddy's girl. Like, I literally reverted. I could write a book psychologically on what happened if they've been missing certain things in their life, or if they've been abused and then suddenly they find this loving parent. I literally reverted back. Like, there came times when we would talk on the phone, and the phone, he'd say goodbye, and I was reliving like toddler, what do they call that when separation anxiety. Like, I desperately wanted to call back and hear his voice, and I thought, wow, I am literally psychologically going through what a child goes through, and I was 50 years old.
And those memories up in your, store those memories in your data bank. that were missing.
Exactly. But then as time went on, family complexities, imagine this, imagine, you have your own family and then suddenly this, daughter shows up and, we have different faiths, we have different circumstances. And then he felt that it was, best losing that. But now at least I know what it feels like. And I remember thinking in my mind, here we have this all powerful God who has to make decisions, like he had to decide, do I let Lori find this man and then have this beautiful experience and to have her feel what it's like, to be loved by a father and nurtured and to hear beautiful things and to experience just the tenderness, and then God knowing that that was going to be taken. Like he has to make decisions like that. And that was another one of those experiences where I thought he entrusted me with a really hard trial. And once again, I experienced rejection and I experienced loneliness and all of those terrible things that Foster never loved at all. And there would be times I would think, I wish I hadn't found him. I wish I didn't know what that felt like to have a dad to call, because now I miss it so badly.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I can only imagine, were your kids involved for that year? I mean, did they lose the grandpa as well? I mean, how are they handling that? How do you explain that to them?
Yeah, that was another thing. And, it was interesting. One of my children is going through a really challenging situation, and she called and just put it on the table, because that's one thing that I've always told my children. Whatever your truth is, put it on the table. We can look at it. We're in this together. And she was really concerned about sharing the truth of what was happening in her life. And she was so afraid of rejection. And I remember telling her, I know what rejection feels like. This will never happen to you. You can tell us anything. We are in this for the long haul. And I am so grateful again that God entrusted me with an experience to know what it feels like to be rejected, because there's a saying that says, it would have been my mistake if it hadn't happened to me first.
Right.
And so I am better for having experienced it, and I will not pass that on to my children. Like they're mine forever, period. I'm their mother forever, period.
And that's where that transparency comes in. You create that bond with your child by being honest, instead of acting as if you're perfect and they're never going to measure up to that, because I'm someone that tried. Just be honest and talk to your kids about your mistakes, and that way they know that it's human. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
In fact, they'll respect you more.
Exactly.
They will respect you more.
Because you're not pretending to be something if you're going to pretend to be something you aren't, then how are your kids ever going to be honest and open with you? They're always going to want to please you and pretend they're better than they are, because they think that's all we want from them is perfection. So, and that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid too.
Perfection and performance. That's right. And in fact, I got a message from this daughter recently, and she was saying, I have just seen so many people, so many parents not know how to handle, these circumstances with their daughters, with their children. And she said, thank you so much for showing me such goodness and grace, and to help her to, to just share in a way where she was safe. But so I'd like to expand on that silence we have. As Mistie, have you ever been in a situation where you have been given the silent treatment?
Yes, my first husband was very abusive that way for days. He wouldn't even eat meals. I cooked meals, he wouldn't even eat those, to punish me.
Yes. Okay. Which leads me to this. So there are usually 5 reasons why somebody will give you the silent treatment. And I'd like to break this down, because people, when they understand other people's behavior, it gives them more peace, because then you can go, oh, at least now I know where they fit in the paradigm. And when you come from dysfunction, you don't know, like, that's part of a system you've been involved with for so long that you don't really know any other way. So I come from a family where the silent treatment, went on for years, and siblings wouldn't talk to each other for many years, and family secrets and all of those things. And so I had to figure out, kind of analytically break down why I'm doing, to make sense of my own life and my own upbringing. And so these are the 5 reasons why people give the silent treatment. Not all of them are bad reasons. For instance, the first one is somebody might just pause. They might just not know what to say. So they're just going to wait and allow themselves some time to think it through. That's not a bad reason to be silent. In fact, it's better than attacking, right? So the second thing would be, they might be perplexed. They might go, I, this whole thing is so confusing to me that it's kind of similar to pause, except for the pause person wants to say the right thing, and so they're waiting. The perplexed stage is, I really don't know how to handle this, so I'm just going to be immobile.
Yeah, we don't have much time, Lori.
Another one is, you might want to protect.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing is, you might want to protect that other person and not. Yes.
Okay.
And not say something harmful. And another one would be, then you're past feeling you're in a complete state of hopelessness. So you just don't want to communicate at all. And then, of course, the one that you're talking about is punishment. You'll give somebody the silent treatment to make them feel small. And if they can make you feel small and not in your power, then usually you'll surrender. And that's a very effective weapon. Silent treatment like that is a weapon. So we have to be careful of that.
Wow. All right, Lori. So you've definitely overcome your worst to live your best. Things are going great for you. I see that here you are on the front cover of the Top Talent magazine. That's amazing. Hats off to you for that, Lori. I've also got another one pulled up here for you. Let's see. I think you were involved in another kind of mastermind, Top Talent mastermind as well. So it looks like that you've definitely turned your life around. You're living your life for the good. You're using everything that you went through to help other people. I know I can hear the wisdom in your voice. I know that you must be the most amazing coach out there and mentor, because so many nuggets of wisdom here, and heartfelt, just sincerity from you, and value. And I just want to thank you so much for everything. I hate that we're having to wrap it up so quickly. I know you have a book you've just finished called Fortified. Where can we get the book, Lori, and when's it available?
Yep, it's actually going to be published this summer. And if people want to contact me, I've been very effective with helping families deal with their challenging circumstances, so they can at gmail.com, and or they can go to my website. I'm still kind of building it, wholefamilymentoring.com, and they can contact me that way too. And the beauty is, people feel safe with me, and I know how to speak the language, and I can help them get from pain to peace, because I've walked that path myself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Lori. I really appreciate it. Go back into the comments after the show, please, and drop all those websites and all those tidbits. And if you wouldn't mind dropping in there, I was trying to type it. I couldn't keep up with it with the time. Type in those 5 reasons for the silent treatment. Those are very valuable things to know. So would you put those, please, in the comments after the show as well for us? Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. If you have something you want to dare to share with Mistie Layne, I encourage you to email me at mistielayne@mistielayne.com. Put the word guest in the subject line. We are live every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Central Time. I encourage you to get out there and hashtag Be That One. Join the Facebook group, hashtag Be That One. Just go serve others, guys. That's what it's about. It's about serving others and being transparent and using your mess and let it become a message, a beautiful message. Lori, thank you.
Love it.
It's time to go. Love you, love you, love you. Thank you.
Love you guys.
We'll see you guys on the next edition, episode 6 of Dare to Share with Mistie Layne. Thank you. Awesome.